Sean O'Malley has built his reputation on flash, rainbow-colored hair, highlight reel knockouts, and unapologetic self-promotion. But his latest viral moment showed a much softer side. The bantamweight star, fresh off selling his $1.1 million Arizona home, decided to use part of the proceeds not on another splashy purchase or brand investment, but on surprising his mom with a $10,000 gift. The gesture, captured in a candid YouTube video, was pure Suga in delivery, casual and understated, yet deeply meaningful in impact. O'Malley simply handed his mom an envelope, prompting her confusion, "For the bank?" before realizing it was for her. The hug and genuine gratitude that followed struck a chord with fans, who often see O'Malley only in fight hype mode or bantering on his podcast. What makes the moment even more striking is how it continues a pattern for O'Malley. Just last year, he shocked both his mom and his longtime partner Danya with $50,000 Mother's Day gifts, calling them the two most important women in his life. For a fighter often accused of brashness, moments like these underline the family foundation behind the persona. This latest gift wasn't random either. It tied directly to his evolving off-the-mat career. O'Malley flipped his house, bought in 2020 for $780,000 for a $320,000 profit, then funneled the money into his new lifestyle company, doing well. Unlike past ventures, such as his partnership with Jake Paul in We, this one is entirely his own project, something he described as his baby with a planned launch later this year. It's a telling move for a fighter whose career momentum has recently taken some hits. Back-to-back losses to Merab Dvalishvili cooled his title aspirations, but O'Malley has embraced his business ventures, endorsements, and YouTube empire as ways to diversify. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million and even talk of a potential crossover boxing match, Suga is clearly thinking beyond the cage. The $10,000 envelope wasn't just a gift, it was a symbol of that shift. While O'Malley remains focused on making another UFC title run, he's showing fans that he's building for the future and making sure family stays at the center of it. Rashid Vagabov's Contender Series story is a perfect example of the razor-thin line fighters walk on Tuesday nights at the Apex. On paper, the Dagestani flyweight checked all the boxes: elite regional record, submission finishes, and a betting line that pegged him as the heaviest favorite of Week 8. Inside the cage, he even dominated Paulo Henrique da Silva, sweeping the judges' scorecards. But when the dust settled, Dana White's verdict was blunt: winning wasn't enough. White's issue wasn't Vagabov's talent, but his inability to back up his bravado. Talking to the UFC boss mid-fight, promising to be a world champion while struggling to put away a 7-1 underdog rubbed him the wrong way. It highlighted something fans often forget: DWCS isn't just about victory, it's about selling yourself as UFC ready right now. And for White, a decision over an outmatched opponent didn't match the hype. That's the ruthless reality of the Contender Series. 4 other fighters that night, Damian Penis, Louis Jourdain, Christopher Alvidrez, and Curtis Campbell, all secured contracts because they delivered exactly what the show is built on: violent, highlight reel endings. Vagabov, despite being the lone winner without a ticket, leaves with the consolation that White did call him talented and young. He may well get another shot down the road, but he'll have to come back with the urgency and killer instinct that the UFC rewards. Meanwhile, Louis Jourdain's story perfectly contrasted Vagabov's. The Canadian fought through adversity, found his finish in round 3, and sealed the deal with a rear-naked choke. That one emphatic moment wasn't just about earning a contract, it also opened the door for him to potentially share a card with his brother Charles Jourdain in Vancouver, something that would mark Canadian UFC history. It was a vivid reminder of how quickly DWCS can change lives: one finish, one contract, one opportunity to make history. Week 8, then, was the Contender Series in a nutshell. For Vagabov, it was a harsh lesson that in the UFC's eyes, dominance without fireworks isn't enough. For Jourdain, it was proof that seizing the moment is everything. Merab Dvalishvili has never been shy about voicing his feelings toward rivals, and in the build-up to UFC 320, his fire is once again aimed squarely at Umar Nurmagomedov. As the machine gears up for his third title defense this year against the always dangerous Corey Sandhagen, he made it clear that the sting of his earlier clash with Nurmagomedov hasn't faded. That fight at UFC 311 was supposed to be the big test for Dvalishvili's championship reign, with many expecting Nurmagomedov's grappling and undefeated record to pose a serious threat. Instead, Dvalishvili controlled the action, nullifying Umar's attempts to dictate the pace and cruising to a comfortable decision win. Still, in his mind, it wasn't the kind of emphatic statement he wanted to make. He's admitted that he fought cautiously, preferring to manage risks rather than chase a finish, and while it secured him the victory, it didn't satisfy him. In a recent interview, Dvalishvili turned up the heat on Umar, promising that a rematch would look completely different. He insisted that this time he wouldn't hold back or let the Dagestani prospect off the hook. His words carried the unmistakable tone of a man still carrying a grudge, dismissing Umar's resilience and vowing to ragdoll him around the octagon until there was no doubt who the better man was. The Georgian champion used the phrase "like a sack" multiple times, describing how he'd drag Umar around the cage if they met again. For a fighter whose identity has always been tied to relentless pressure and bottomless cardio, it was more than just talk, it was a promise to unleash his full intensity. The comments add another layer of intrigue to the bantamweight picture. While Nurmagomedov is set to return at UFC 321 against Mario Bautista in what could be a crucial fight for his climb back up the ladder, Dvalishvili is already talking like the rematch is inevitable. If both men keep winning, it may be hard for the UFC to ignore. Nurmagomedov, despite his setback, remains a big name and carries the Nurmagomedov family legacy, which always draws eyes. For Dvalishvili, dispatching him in more dominant fashion would be a chance to settle unfinished business and further cement his own reign as one of the most dominant in UFC bantamweight history. Right now, though, his attention has to remain on Sandhagen, a creative and unpredictable striker who represents one of the trickiest challenges of his career. But the fact that Dvalishvili is still fixated on Umar shows how personal that rivalry has become. It's not just about defending the belt anymore. It's about making a statement, proving a point, and crushing a rival who, in his eyes, still hasn't fully accepted defeat. Big rumors are shaking up Fight Week ahead of UFC 320. According to a post from Upfront MMA, one of the light heavyweight title contenders is reportedly out of the fight. The speculation quickly turned toward Alex Pereira, with fans online questioning whether Powhatan is the one who won't make it to the octagon this Saturday. Other names are Jiri and Khalil Rountree. As of now, there's been no official confirmation from the UFC, Pereira's camp, or Magomedov Ankalaev's side, and all promotional materials still list the highly anticipated rematch as the main event. Still, the timing of the rumor has stirred plenty of debate, with some fans wondering if the promotion has a backup plan in place. Until something concrete comes out, it remains just that, a rumor. But with Fight Night just days away, this could be a storyline to keep a very close eye on. Charles Jourdain's upcoming clash with Davy Grant at UFC Vancouver on October 18 has sparked a wave of excitement among Canadian fight fans, and Jesse Ronson has added his voice to the conversation with some thoughtful insight. Ronson, who knows Jourdain well from their shared time on the Canadian circuit, even recalling how they were once set to square off in a champ versus champ matchup under the TKO banner in Montreal, has been watching closely as Air Jourdain prepares for his return. From Ronson's perspective, this bout is well-timed for Jourdain, who is balancing a new chapter in his personal life with the demands of a grueling training camp. He pointed out that Jourdain recently became a father, which could bring either extra motivation or unexpected distraction, depending on how the fighter handles it. In Ronson's eyes, Jourdain looks as sharp as ever on social media, and he's convinced the featherweight turned bantamweight is treating the Grant fight as a true showcase opportunity.
Grant, now 38, remains a dangerous veteran with knockout power, but Ronson believes Jourdain's youth, speed, and flair should give him the edge. Ronson highlighted Jourdain's training with Bazooka Joe Valtellini, a former Glory kickboxing champion and respected coach, as another reason to expect a polished performance. He noted the discipline required for Jourdain to balance fatherhood with hard hours in the gym, praising his ability to stay focused when others might have struggled. To Ronson, this shows Jourdain's maturity and hunger at a point in his career when many fighters face make-or-break moments. Looking at the bantamweight picture, Ronson argued that Jourdain might finally find his true home at 135 pounds. While he never saw Jourdain as a long-term threat at featherweight, he feels the Canadian's frame, cardio, and striking creativity will serve him far better against bantamweight opposition. The only potential hurdle, in his mind, is dealing with a strong wrestler, but he was quick to question whether the current bantamweight elite even has a grinder-style fighter capable of neutralizing Jourdain's flair. In Ronson's prediction, it won't be long before Jourdain cracks the top 10 if he performs to his full potential. Perhaps most intriguing is Ronson's belief that fans will see the return of the old Air Jourdain, the dynamic, risk-taking striker who built his reputation on highlight reel moments. He mentioned the flying scissor knees and wild creativity that made Jourdain a fan favorite in the first place, suggesting this fight could be the platform for a statement comeback. In short, Ronson views UFC Vancouver not just as another test for Jourdain, but as the stage for a reinvention, one that blends his maturity as a fighter and father with the wild, exciting style that first put him on the map.
Magomedov Ankalaev may be heading into UFC 320 with a 14-fight unbeaten streak in the light heavyweight belt on his shoulder, but the conversation surrounding him is less about his dominance and more about whether he's good for business. Dean Thomas stirred the pot earlier this year when he floated the idea of the UFC trading him to the PFL in exchange for rising star Dakota Ditcheva, a move that echoed the historic Ben Askren-Demetrius Johnson swap years ago. At the time, many dismissed the suggestion as a stretch, but now Brendan Schaub has jumped in to not only back Thomas, but take the argument a step further. On his show, Schaub bluntly argued that Ankalaev's success actually puts the UFC in a tough spot. In his view, Ankalaev's style is brutally effective but not marketable, his personality doesn't move the needle, and his skill set threatens to derail fighters the UFC does want to showcase, most notably Alex Pereira. Pereira, with his knockout power, larger-than-life aura, and crossover appeal from kickboxing, has become a fan favorite and a pay-per-view draw in a very short period of time. Ankalaev beating him twice in the span of a year, Schaub suggested, wouldn't just cement Ankalaev's reign, it would deflate one of the UFC's most bankable stars. Schaub contrasted that with Ditcheva, who has been tearing through competition in the PFL. Young, dynamic, and already drawing attention for both her skill and star power, she could inject instant life into the UFC's women's flyweight division, a weight class that has struggled to find a breakout name since Valentina Shevchenko's long reign. In his eyes, Ditcheva represents opportunity and growth, while Ankalaev represents a business headache, an unstoppable but low-profile champion who doesn't help sell cards. The remarks hit on a broader tension that's dogged Ankalaev for years. Hardcore fans appreciate his technical mastery and unshakable composure, but casual fans often find his fights calculated and his post-fight presence subdued. He doesn't play the villain, he doesn't play the showman, he just wins, and in the fight business, sometimes that isn't enough. UFC 320 only magnifies the dilemma. If Pereira gets revenge, the UFC gets a highlight-friendly champion back on top. If Ankalaev repeats what he did at UFC 313, the promotion faces the possibility of another dominant but underwhelming reign. This is why the stakes of UFC 320 feel bigger than just the belt. For Pereira, it's a chance to restore his momentum and prove he can solve the puzzle of Ankalaev's calculated approach. For Ankalaev, it's a chance to silence critics who say he doesn't deliver drama outside of winning.
And for the UFC, it's about whether the fighter with the belt can also be the fighter who keeps fans invested.
Alex Pereira is no stranger to mind games in the build-up to big fights, but heading into UFC 320, he seems unfazed by the latest jab thrown from Magomedov Ankalaev's corner. After his head coach Merab Magomedov publicly downplayed Pereira's legendary knockout power, calling him an old-school kickboxer who can't end a fight with a single strike, Pereira wasted little time in firing back with a calm but pointed warning. The Brazilian knows his reputation speaks for itself. In just a few short years since crossing over from kickboxing, Pereira has built a UFC highlight reel littered with violent finishes. From his thunderous left hook against Jiri Prochazka to the devastating stoppages of Khalil Rountree Jr. and Jamal Hill, Pereira has proved over and over again that he doesn't need volume to hurt opponents. One clean connection can turn the lights out. The idea that he lacks one-punch knockout power is almost laughable to those who followed his career closely. And Pereira himself was quick to remind everyone that even respected officials like referee Mark Goddard had marveled at the sheer force of his strikes. Yet rather than getting pulled into Ankalaev's camp's war of words, Pereira brushed it off with a characteristic mix of stoicism and menace. He admitted he doesn't spend time obsessing over his opponent's media appearances or promotional clips, skipping through anything that doesn't directly relate to his own performance. What matters to him isn't the chatter, it's what happens in the cage. And in his own words, Magomedov and Ankalaev will be in for a surprise if they truly believe he can't end things with one blow. The rematch adds another layer of intrigue because of how the first fight played out. Back at UFC 313, Pereira stuffed all of Ankalaev's takedowns, proving he could hold his own against the Dagestani's grappling. But on the feet, it was Ankalaev who edged him out, using volume and timing to frustrate Pereira and cruise to a decision victory. That result raised doubts about whether Pereira could adjust his approach, but also gave him a blueprint of what to correct. For a fighter with his finishing instincts, the idea of making one or two critical adjustments and landing clean on Ankalaev is far from far-fetched. With the rematch set in stone, the stakes couldn't be higher. Pereira has the chance not just to avenge his loss, but to end Ankalaev's 14-fight unbeaten streak and re-establish himself as the division's most feared knockout artist. Ankalaev, on the other hand, has every reason to try to deflate Pereira's aura before they lock horns again, using his coach's comments as part of a broader mental strategy. But if Pereira's demeanor is anything to go by, he isn't rattled in the slightest. He's focused, prepared, and perhaps even relishing the chance to silence Ankalaev's team the way he silenced so many opponents before. Jack Hermansson and Mike de Beek Orolbai are set to collide in what looks like one of the more intriguing stylistic and career crossroads matchups on the upcoming UFC Qatar card, scheduled for November 22 at Abha Arena in Doha. The fight adds extra intrigue because both men are meeting in the middle. Hermansson is dropping down to welterweight for the first time in his UFC run, while Orolbai is moving back up after stints at lightweight and catchweight. For Hermansson, this bout represents something of a career reset. The 37-year-old Joker has long been a fixture of the middleweight division, scoring big wins over names like Ronaldo Jacare Souza, Kelvin Gastelum, Chris Curtis, and Joe Pyfer. However, he struggled for consistency, splitting his last 10 appearances and most recently suffering a first-round TKO loss to Gregory Rodriguez at UFC 317. The move to 170 pounds could either breathe new life into his career or highlight the challenges of cutting more weight at this stage in his fighting journey. Orolbai, meanwhile, comes in as the younger, fresher fighter looking to build momentum. At 27, he already owns a solid 14-1 record and has proven his versatility with fights across multiple weight divisions.
His UFC debut came at welterweight in 2023, and he re-enters the division following a strong first-round submission win over Tofik Musayev in June at UFC Baku. Unlike Hermansson, Orolbai seems to be approaching his physical prime, and this matchup offers him the chance to make a statement against a veteran with name value. The booking also fits into the UFC's broader push to make its inaugural event in Qatar feel like a landmark card. While the main event has yet to be announced, Hermansson vs. Orolbai adds a compelling narrative. A seasoned contender searching for reinvention, colliding with a rising talent eager to prove he belongs among the elite. The outcome could tell us a lot about where each man stands. Whether Hermansson still has the tools to reinvent himself at a new weight, or whether Orolbai is ready to claim a spot on the welterweight radar.